Blessings.
Hatep and Ma'at. That means we're offering you truth. We want to welcome you to the Sexual Alchemy webinar. If it's your first time here, this is Sexual Alchemy. It is a webinar series focused on this beautiful, sacred sexual science of our ancient African ancestors. If you want more information about it, you can read in the description box. You can see the link to the playlist where you can watch all of the other videos in the series. Today, we are going to, well, first and foremost, we'll introduce ourselves for those who are new here. If you're here with us live, if you've been here before, welcome back, welcome Black. And we want to ask you, if you're here with us live, to please go ahead and tune in with us in the chat so that way we can include you in the dialogue today. So shout out to everybody who's already in the house here with us. Our brother Wale, as always. It's always great to have you here. Shout out to oh, this must be one of your peoples. Blessings. And shout out to our sister Simone. Welcome. Shout out to the Tahuti Militia and everybody else in the house. So thank you for being here with us live. And if you're here watching the replay or the raw play, as we like to say, still engage with us. You can go ahead and send a comment, leave a comment, and we'll gladly respond back. And without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to my sis, Leyanne, and we'll go ahead and give you some brief introductions.
Yes, welcome. We are excited as always because this is just a lot of magic that we've been sharing with y'all. So like Nef said, this is a sexual alchemy series that we've been doing to give you a little taste, a little some for this more transformative 7-day sexual alchemy retreat that we will be hosting in Cabo Verde, Africa, starting February 28th. So we're giving you a little taste. We've been going through the chakras, and Nef will share more about that. But for those who might not know me, my name is Leyanne Oliveira. I am a medicine woman, a yogini, a mother, someone who is just in love with the process of alchemy, of liberation, of getting to support people in owning their power, embodying their power, and being their full selves and who they have come to be on earth during this time of revolution that we are in.
Yes, and I am Aust NeferKa. You can call me Nef. I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at, which is a revolutionary instrument that's designed for those who are here to embody the principles of universal law and cosmic order. These beautiful divine energies can come together for the resurrection of African people by building cooperative institutions. So we are a grassroots cooperative. I am also a sacred wisdom keeper of ancient African sacred science. I am a farmer, a healing artist, and I'm so glad to be alongside my beautiful sister and sharing this medicine with you all. So we'll go ahead and put our slides here. Today is all about cultivating your creativity. So it's interesting because when we're talking about sexual alchemy, this energy center that we're actually going to cover today is typically the one, like the central point that people think about because it is very sexual. But we're going to go ahead and get started and make sure that we're all grounded and present, because really we want to remember that the whole essence of this medicine is about us removing the profanity and the stains that we have from our programming, from being in this degenerate cycle, and restoring the sanctity and the sacredness of sexual energy. And that is it as a creative force, right? So that's why today we're talking about cultivating your creativity. So I want to invite everybody who's here with us. If you're watching and you cannot practice with us the different practices and the taste of the medicine that we give you, it's very important that you come back to it and you practice with us, because that is the point. This is not just about intellectual masturbation. Okay, we want you to get the whole experience. You need the ecstasy. Okay, so this is the part of the practice that's very important, because when we do the retreat in Cabo Verde for sexual alchemy, we're going in, right? We're going to go move through the body. We're going to be doing meditation, a lot of movement. A lot of this is about getting in tune with the body. So for right now, wherever you are, I want you to go ahead and center yourself in this moment, right? We're going to allow this moment to bring us fully present here. I'm going to invite us to take 3 releasing breaths. These are going to be inhaling through our nostrils, and we're going to exhale from the mouth. And we're going to exhale audibly, right? So don't hold back, just let it out. We're moving through a beautiful energy right now that really wants to clear out. So go ahead and allow yourself to release, okay? So on your next exhale, I want you to just hold on empty so we can synchronize our inhale together. So as you exhale, just empty and hold on empty. Even huff out a little extra. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Inhaling through the nostrils. Filling that belly up like a balloon. Drop that jaw and we're going to release. Hold on empty for 3, 2, 1. Inhaling through the nostrils. Stay in that belly. Fill it all up. Down low in the belly, right? We're going to take deep breaths. Hold at the top here for 3, 2, 1. Drop that jaw. Contract that belly back. Hold on empty for 3, 2, 1. Inhaling in the nostrils. High that belly. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Drop that jaw and release. Contracting that belly button back towards the spine. And just come back in to your normal breath, allowing yourself to connect. I want to invite you to go ahead and lightly shut your eyes, or if you feel comfortable, just close them all the way. We're just going to bring ourselves into the space of the cosmos, into the duat. Remember, we talked last session about the duat coming into that underworld, into that darkness that we go every night. This creative chaos that actually is what has the pure potential of all that could be. So we're coming into this dark space as we close our eyes. And I'm going to invite you to bring the palms of your hands together and rub the palms of your hands together. This is all review, right? We're coming back into that electromagnetic charge that we're putting right in the palm of our hands. So go ahead and put whatever you feel like you may need, whatever intentions you want to seed into the palm of your hands, whatever medicine you want to put in here. As you're creating this friction, we're actually stimulating with this warmth, the same energy of the sun, right? Ra. Remember we talked about Ra, putting that energy in the palm of our hands. And I'm going to invite you to go ahead and begin by coming into the face. We're going to go ahead and start feeling ourselves. I want you to just go ahead and feel the body, just connecting. Sometimes we really don't even give ourselves the space to just be here with our own beautiful vessel that's carrying us every day. So I want you to go ahead and feel in. You can feel around your eyes, your temple. You can massage yourself a little bit. We're just getting a little bit of sensual touch because this is where we're moving into today. This is the energy of the day. You can move down into your neck. Don't forget your ears. Just give yourself a little touch. Just that electrical pulse that we give ourselves. Just the intent, right? The consciousness that we put into our hands is very powerful. So don't underestimate your own power. All right, I want you to go ahead and feel, get your arms, your shoulders. If you feel any tension here, just go ahead and massage that out a little bit. We tend to hold a lot of tension in our shoulders. Gotta give ourselves just the courtesy of being present with our body and really sensing and feeling our body in this moment. You can come down into the palms of your hands, warm yourself up here, right? Now, as we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead, just massage yourself a little bit. We're gonna do a brief somatic practice, right, of coming into the body and being intentional about releasing. Right? Our body stores a lot of energy. our body stores our emotions, right? So the things that might be coming up emotionally for us in this cycle, allow those things to come to the surface of the body as you're touching yourself, right? And we're going to go ahead and shake it off. It's going to be a slight shake. I do encourage you to incorporate this into your practice because it's an easy, simple way of just releasing energy from your body, right? Okay. So I'm going to invite us to literally just begin to shake the energy off. So you can shake your arms, shake your shoulders, right? I know sometimes we don't want to get silly, but this is what you got to do. This is one of the most powerful practices you can do. Shake it off. If you get a chance to really stand up and really shake today or over the next few days, I highly recommend you do it because this practice allows you to just release stored up energy. You can shake your head, roll your neck. Where there's movement, there's no stagnicity. All right, shake it off. Shake off what you don't need. That's how you make space for what you want, okay? We're going to come in. We're going to just swipe it off. Thank you. Just swipe it right off. The tips of our fingers usually hold energy because they're the edge of our body, right, in our feet. So it's good to just swipe that energy off. Wipe it off your face, going back and up, right? Releasing, getting it off the throat, anything that's blocking us from speaking the truth, right? Get anything off your shoulders, any stress, any tension, just swipe that off. Don't underestimate the power of this practice. I highly recommend it. I do this every single day. Clear that off because we're constantly collecting energy, especially in our face, right? It's the first place people see and look at. So it's just a very simple practice that you can do to be self-honoring. Okay? Just swipe it off your heart, your chest, and release. Ashe. Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you for sharing in that practice with us. And we're going to go ahead and dive into today's session. So, as I said, it's all about cultivating your creativity. We have been working and moving through the electromagnetic field of the body. We've been teaching and sharing, reminding you of this genetic memory, this knowledge that you have because it's in your body, right? So just reminding you of this beautiful stream and flow of energy, this electromagnetic circulatory system that we have in our body. And we've been highlighting the main 7 energy centers that most people know about. And the Sexual Alkhemy Retreat, we go into all 12 energy centers. We started with the series at the crown, so we're working our way from the top down. We started at the crown, we went into the first eye, we've done the throat, we've come to the heart, the solar plexus, and now we're at the sacral. Okay, so as we're thinking about the flow of energy and everything that we've covered, remember, the system can go from the bottom up or the top down, because as it's circulating, it goes both ways, right? So since we've been coming from the top down, we've been moving from the higher frequencies, right? That divine force, that connection to universal consciousness that we've been talking about, and allowing it to flow into the body. And we've been balancing the energy so that we can have a clean stream, a clean flow of energy working its way down. And today we're going to go into the sacral.
The sacral. So for those that might be joining us for the first time, thank you, sis, for that beautiful grounding and arriving, and then kind of getting us up to speed to where we are today. So for those that might be joining us, or even those that are here, I just want to emphasize that the system that we're talking about is in the subtle body, right? So this is not this flow of energy or these vortexes, these specific centers we're talking about is in our subtle body. So the part of us that is subtle, it's in the energy realm. It's not if you physically cut the body and you look inside, you're not going to see these energy centers because they're in the subtler realms of reality. And today we are talking about the sacral Arit, or the sacral chakra. And we usually start by saying this is our favorite. I will full disclaimer that I love the sacral, but it is not my favorite. It's been my place of the most work and the place that I've needed to pay the most attention to and cultivate. So I'm really excited about this conversation because it connects to so many different parts of us. So the sacral chakra in Sanskrit is Sadhisthana, which essentially translates to sweetness. So this is the part of us that is connected to pleasure. So the center is one of the ways that my teacher has explained the chakra system to me is that each chakra develops so each chakra starting at the root develops in the first 7 years of your life. So the root, the first chakra, which is the root chakra, which we'll go into next Thursday. This is the last chakra we'll go into for this webinar. That chakra is formed in the first 7 years of our lives. Huh?
No, I was just saying it's Friday.
Oh, it's Friday. Friday, yes. And then we move up, which is the chakra that we're talking about today, which is the sacral. So that chakra forms around the time we're in puberty, around 14 years old, 15, around that sensitive time when we're coming into our sensuality, our sexuality, right? We start feeling this inner flame or this activity in our genitals that we often associate with sex, but really it's our creation energy. It's the creativity energy. So the sacral chakra, which is about 2 inches or 2 fingers below the belly button. So you can locate it on yourself by just putting 2 fingers below your belly button. And that's kind of where it's located. This sacral is connected to sensuality, sexuality, creation, creativity, right? Because that is where the womb is inside of the feminine. So it's the place of it's the womb center, right? This place of creation, creativity. It's also connected to family, community, relationships. Again, after 7 years old, by the time you're going up into this being a young adult, this is the time where you start building your self-identity, your self-concept. All Hey, buddy. Mommy's in her meeting. Okay. Our teenage will start building its identity or self-concept based on relationships or what the family has told them up to that point. Because when you're in the sacral chakra, the subconscious mind has already been created. So you're starting to decide, who am I in the world? So relationships and family is really important for the center, as well as emotions. This is your center of emotions, right? They often tell us that we hold so much in our pelvic bowl. We hold so much in our hips, which is the emotions. We're holding a lot of emotions there. And as you can see here, Mommy, we have
this timer.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Which number?
One second, y'all. Let me get this. Take over, sis. Let me just get this little guy.
Okay. So the beautiful thing about this little guy coming in is that also when we're talking about the sacral energy and we're talking about this creative energy, we're talking about the creative life force that actually is the energy that creates life itself. Right. So that is a really beautiful and important expression of it, because this is the same region of the body that has the womb. It has all of the reproductive organs. And essentially, it is really the most primal aspect of our humanity, because as animals, we are here to reproduce ourselves. right? So sometimes people neutralize this this region of the body, or this of the energy body, or this energy center, by saying sexual organs, but they are reproductive organs at a primal level. So I do want to also honor and acknowledge that while this energy is also for pleasure, sensuality, it is also very functional and very sacred, because it is the energy in the region that does birth, right? It creates not just life, it creates all of the things that we create. Even our creative thoughts and ideas are stimulated from this region of our body.
Yeah, and as you can see here, so the sacral chakra is located right in the right above the perineum, right in the center, in the middle of this beautiful anatomy that we have, this bone structure known as the pelvic bone. And the pelvic bone is very important because it is the bottom of it. It is where the spine ends and connects to our body, to our structures below, where the pelvis is what basically holds the top part of our bodies and stabilizes us. And like Sis said, in we have these muscles in the pelvic bowl that is very important to us. For women specifically, our gravitational pull, or the way that we should center ourselves, although oftentimes, and this could be the same for men, my expertise is in feminine bodies. But because, again, the structure is what holds the top part of our bodies, I'm sure it's probably similar. I would have to do research to be 100% sure. But if you one of the ways that you can bring this chakra into balance, or the way that you should orient yourself or orient your mind, is to constantly bring your awareness to the pelvic bowl, because it's this place of balancing us. If you can orient yourself, like literally bring your awareness out from up here and descend it down to the pelvic bowl, you could do that now. Just like bring your attention, your awareness there. That is actually the most balanced way for a human being to be moving in the world, is from the midpoint of our bodies versus the top of our bodies, which most of us are operating from the mind. That's where the imbalance is, the overactive, because we're actually supposed to be in the pelvic bowl. As women, this is the center in which we should be orienting ourselves, because this is where our creativity is, and our power, like the ability to create not only like Nef said, not only life, but any projects, any ideas, anything we have, it's in this creativity center. The pelvis is really, really important. There's a lot of us, because we're constantly sitting all day, and we're not in movement, which is another important element of this chakra, movement. Because we're sitting a lot of our pelvic is actually out of alignment, which is causing a lot of imbalance in our postures, which is really important to our organ health, the way that we're obviously walking in the world, the way that we stand in the world. So it's causing a lot of problems, not only in the way that we stand, the way that we are in our spine health, but it's also causing a lot of issue in the muscles that hold the organs, that hold the bladder and other reproductive organs. Someone asked, is this the root chakra? So this is not the root chakra, but it's right above it, so it's closely related. So some of the things that we're seeing here might also be connected to the root chakra as well, but today we're speaking specifically about the sacral chakra. Good question.
They're very closely related. So I do think it's important to recognize. It's also important to recognize that these are the main energy centers that the dominant, like, I don't even want to say the dominant, but the mainstream culture and this construct that's designed to leech off of us, to have this parasitic relationship. Remember, in the last session, we talked about that. We talked about what is it that we consider demonic, or entities, or like these forces that are parasitic, that ancestrally we spoke about as being forces that exist within the underworld, within the darkness, right? And we talked about those energies being parasitic and feeding off of us. This is the main space that those entities attach to us, because through sexual trauma, right? And sexual abuse and things that are very prominent right now during this degenerate cycle of humanity, those things allow the entities to tether to us. They could be belief systems like I'm not worthy, right? It could be any, it's not just the essence of like of an entity or a life form that can attach itself or possess you. It can also be a belief, a thought form that can attach itself to you based off of your sexual trauma or sexual wounding, or just sexual manipulation through watching things on the media, right? When you think about a lot of the music that's hypersexualized, all of that is also attaching itself to this energy center. So it's not just the sacral, it's also the root, right? When we're thinking about focusing on money and sex and, you know, the way that the culture is cultivated to stifle us and keep us in the denser, lower energy centers. Because remember what happens when we talked about, last session, we talked about the solar plexus, we talked about our willpower. That's your ability to actually assert yourself. So it stagnates us. So this is really important in terms of like knowing that there is a conflation, like sometimes we can blur the line between these two energies, because these are actually the two energies, the lower energy centers that we are being manipulated to be stuck in.
Yep. And in the below, and we also talked about the heart chakra being the connector between our lower self and our higher self. So remember that right now we are in the unconscious, right? These are the more denser parts of ourselves, like Nef said, which is harder for us to access because it's like not in our conscious mind. It's like behind the scene. It's working every single day. It's affecting all of our decisions that we're making in our lives daily, but it's not something we're consciously thinking about. You're not walking around and thinking, oh, the reason why I am not, you know, in healthy relationships with people around me is because I have, you know, a sexual trauma from the past, or I don't feel worthy because I haven't experienced the level of intimacy and connection with my family that I desire. So these are on the unconscious. So just to summarize a little bit more about the pelvic as we move on, because there's so many other elements that we really want to talk about with the sacral chakra. The pelvic bowl, okay, this is our place of orientation. And as you could tell here, for men and women, the pelvic bowl is one of the easiest way. Like if an anthropologist is looking at a body, the bones, the left bones of humans, this is one of the easiest way to identify if the human was a man or a woman. And that's because there are specific differences between the male pelvic and in the woman's pelvic. And it's because obviously, as you can see in the picture here, the woman's pelvic bowl is a lot wider than the men's pelvic bowl, and that's for because women bear life. We have to have a pelvic bowl that can expand to the size of a human when we're birthing them. And then also the male bones are thicker, while the female bones are thinner. And again, for that reason, for the flexibility and the openness. The pelvic bone for the men, it's also it's more narrow. You could see the V shape there, versus the woman's pelvic bone is also wider. And that also, you know, anything physical is first metaphysical. It's first subtle before it becomes physical, as we've been talking about. And this also shows a woman's capacity to not our level of creativity, you know, in comparison to males on the metaphysical level. Our ability, because we as women our strength, right? Our physical strength is not at the level of a man. We know that men are physically stronger at the subtle level, right? The energetic level of us, our creativity, our intuition, which is the womb can also be seen as that. This pelvic, the sacral is our intuition. We have a wider intuition. We have a bigger capacity to feel into the subtle realms, to have a more a more of a spiritual power, you could say, than men do, because again, we have to be able to protect ourselves and sense things before they happen, because at a physical level we are weaker than men. We are not physically as strong. Our anatomy is not as strong, which is also why the men's pelvic the Liam, which is like the wing, for a man, it's a lot higher than the woman's, because a man's build is strong, can be stronger or heavier than a woman. So they're in, that's why the bone is thicker, because so it can be able to support that upper body, a heavier upper body than the woman's Liam, which is the wing of the pelvis, because we tend to have smaller structure, smaller bone.
Yeah, and the pubic arc that you see at the bottom there, you see how on the male side it's narrower, and on the female side it's wider. So one thing about this energy center, the sacral is very significant because it's an energy center of distinction, which is very, very important. It's also why when our sister said this is representing of the second 7-year cycle, which is when the human goes through puberty, which is a state of distinction, right? Because it's just like in the womb, when the baby is in the womb, there's one point where the genitalia and everything is one. Whether it's a female or a male, it's one energy. And then it starts to either come out active or it remains inward, right? The actual sexual organs. So I think it's really important to recognize that metaphysically and physically, like, they're mirroring each other because of these distinctions that happen on a physical level, right? Generally speaking, again, right? We're not saying that means there's no woman that's stronger than no man. That's not what we're saying. We're speaking about the general, distinctions between male and female bodies, right? So it's important to recognize, like, when it comes into that stage of distinction, this is why in African culture and many indigenous cultures that stem out, the cradle of civilization or the cradle of humanity, it's very important to have rites of passage because of the transitional phase that happens when the sexual energy of the child is now developing them into the rights of what it means to be then a woman, or what it then means to be a man. These are very deeply rooted cultural practices, beliefs that the child is then ushered into by the elders, right? So I think that that's very important, because when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, I told you guys I want to neutralize it at times and say mother and father energy, right? Because we both know, we all know that we have both our mother and our father in us, right? So the same way we have our mother and our father in us, that means we have that male and female dynamic interplaying within us. And it interplays in this region, in this energy center, through the dance of the intercourse of those two energies. That can be a physical expression through sex with another individual, absolutely. And still, the primary sexual intercourse is happening between you and you, right? The two polarities of you, the part of you that is active, masculine, the part of you that's receptive, feminine. So that's a really important thing that I wanted to speak on, because even though there are differences in this region, and when we're dealing with the lower energy centers, it's important to recognize that once we start to move up, it comes together, right? This is why we kind of see those knots coming together at each energy center, right? It's the correlating of the two energies. I wish I had put that on the screen too, like to show the two serpents, because we had talked about that before.
Yeah, thank you, sis. That's actually making me think about, this center is also connected to the reproductive organs, right? And when we talk about puberty, specifically for women, again, my expertise is on women. That's why I tend to go there. And sis has a lot more experience with working with men with sexual alchemy. But for women, the puberty stage is when we're stepping into our monarch years, right? When we're talking about initiations of our womanhood, when we're stepping into monarch is when we get our cycle, right? When we get our blood. So this is around the time when the sacral is forming, is around the time where a woman experiences her first bleed, right? Her first moon cycle. And in one of the imbalances that can be showing up physically for women when they have imbalances in the sacral chakra is reproductive organ or menstrual cycle issues. Like, and again, I'll say this, and I'll add some to it, like some imbalances like PCOS, endometritis, infertility. And of course, there are many other factors that contribute to these imbalances, but we're speaking, if you want to go into the subtle realms of looking at these imbalances, the sacral chakra is a really beautiful energy point, energetic vortex to step into and balance out, to be able to revert those imbalances and bring them back into balance.
Yeah, I would love to add to that too, because it's interesting to think about like what happens with the imbalances in the world that we live in right now. Think about it. The chemistry of this part of the body is really associated with what? Our hormones, right?
Yes.
That's the body's chemical language, right?
Yes.
So because the chemistry is out of balance, it could be because of the chemicals in the food, all of the processed foods. It could be the deodorants and all the synthetic and artificial chemicals we're exposing our bodies to. It could be the poisons in the atmosphere and the toxins that we're constantly being exposed to with all of this pollution. Look at how the young girls are getting their cycles way earlier now. That is a direct sign of also the imbalance, collectively speaking, of the sacral energy. It also speaks to one of the key imbalances that expresses itself in sexual energy that we talk about through sexual trauma, as we're healing these wounds so they don't recycle. Things like pedophilia, right? When we're talking about the abuse of children or the hypersexualization of children, right? Now it's starting to manifest as the children are actually coming into puberty and into their sexualized energy sooner. And that's sexualized in the culture in our modern day, in this moment, through a very grotesque and profane lens. It's not interpreted in a sacred lens, right? And then I also wanted to speak on another aspect that I've been very curious about, that I do want to mention in terms of the male sexual development, right? One thing is the voice that begins to change. So I want to directly remind everyone about what we had discussed when we did the throat Arit. When we did the throat Arit, we talked about that connection between the jaw, right? The throat energy center, and the pelvic floor, the sacral energy center. These are directly connected. So when you think about it in the male, as his voice and his vocal cords begin to then change, right? That's also an expression of the connection of that sexual energy that's being stimulated, that creative energy that's now transmuting and transforming the body, not just of the woman, but also of the man. So the biochemistry process that's happening at that critical juncture is really significant for both. And I wanted to mention another sexual element that I think is very significant, that impacts men mainly, because in the Western world, female circumcision is not something that's typically done. And in the African world, the female circumcision that is done is not necessarily done when the baby is born, right? But with male circumcision, that is a tradition that has been perpetuated. And that process is not something that people have considered, the trauma of literally cutting the foreskin of a baby. And that also leaves an imprint metaphysically on the child, right? And as that child develops, that leaves an imprint on their sexual energy, right? So I just wanted to mention that briefly, but it is something that's very significant. And I notice it's something that comes up when doing sexual alchemy work with males. And there's a distinct difference in the frequency of the sexual energy of those who have been circumcised and those who have not been. Very subtle, but important thing.
Yeah. And it also, because I have a little boy, that I did a lot of research around this, during that time to make the decision. And one of the key things that kept coming out of my research was it also affects their level of pleasure. So men that aren't circumcised actually experience more pleasure because of the pulling back of the skin when they're penetrating a woman versus the men that don't. And obviously the scar tissue from the circumcision that happens, it decreases their level of pleasure, which is which is also connected to the sacral chakra.
Absolutely. And that desensitization is very significant because, again, let's go to a little bit more of distinction between male and female sexual energy, right? Male and female sexual energy is a bit different. It moves differently. The lower, denser energies and the higher frequencies, like they function differently. But remember, they're also magnetized to each other because they're complementary. It's supposed to be the same thing. It's a magnet, the positive and the negative charge coming together, right? So I think about how, we'll get into this in terms of talking about other imbalances. But when we're talking about things like pornography and the way that people are being programmed sexually, you think about how that act is depicted. It's through a lot of like, it's very fast, right? And it's also speaking to a desensitization around like the thrusting and the push, right? And the interesting thing about that to me is the fact that the female energy and the way that literally the blood flow and the way that the woman experiences her erection is very different than the way that the male experiences it. And then there's less sensitivity to that because that is a slower process. And in order to come into a place of, for example, with sexual alchemy, the goal when it comes to our sexual expression, right, even in the act of physical pleasure and sex, is to experience the sensual pleasure, to experience the ecstasy. And in the culture that we've been programmed into, it's like, just get to the end, just have an orgasm, just release, just come, right? Like, that's very different than what we're talking about when we're talking about honoring the sexual energy and really leaning into it. And like, what are we doing it for? Is it just to self-soothe like an addiction? Or is it a truly creative, intentional, conscious process that you actually want to be in and sit with? What's the rush?
Mm-hmm.
If it's the most tasty thing, like, what's the rush? You know, so I think about like that distinction as well, and just the way that modern culture is expressing sexual energy in this imbalanced way.
Yeah, and even to go further on that, because we're again, sacral chakra is around pleasure. There's been so many studies done on women that shows that women don't reach their sexual peak, which is like their most yummiest sex, the more pleasurable sex, till about the average age of 35. And for men, they reach their sexual peak usually by the age of 15. Think about that difference. Yeah, because of the difference, like you're saying, sister, in our arousal and even on our anatomy and in our pleasure type, right? For women, we are flowers, so it takes time. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to arouse a woman, right? You could do that in different ways. You could do it before you get home through text. We're going on to like the sex education of it. Versus men, it could be a quick, I'm aroused, let's get it done. But then it doesn't reach that ultimate union, that synergy, that pleasure for both parties, because you can experience a lot more pleasure when both are in alignment with what is happening versus one person is getting off while the other person is left unsatisfied, right? Mm-hmm. With their pleasure not activated.
Yeah, and speaking of union, I wanted to put siSTARS back on here because we were talking about the union of the two regions. And you'll notice that when you look at that JED, that spinal column that they're tying onto, as I mentioned before, look at the bottom, you literally see the pelvic bone at the bottom, right? That shape there. And that's very significant because we were actually speaking in multiple layers through the symbolism that you see on the screen. I think there's some other imbalances too that we can speak about. Well, maybe we could talk about a little bit of like, what is the healed expression of the sacral energy?
Before we go there, can I just share two other elements? I think it's just going to add so people can just conceptualize it a little bit more. So we've talked about all the different elements that govern a specific chakra. So for the heart, we talked about it being air, right? We wanted our heart to be as light as a feather. And the element that rules the sacral chakra is water. And we know that water is connected to our emotions. This chakra is also connected to movement. When you're thinking about healing it or deciphering, like, is mind balanced or imbalanced, you could just connect it to movement. How much movement are you getting, or how much flow. So this is also the sacral chakra, because of the water element, it also has to do with flow in life, right? Water is life. Life is water. Water is one of the first elements on this planet. Without the water, there would be no life. We could not exist. And then also change, right? The water is constantly in motion. So when the water is not moving, right, when it's not dealing with the change, the flow of life, then it becomes stale and dead. And when we could think about that with the sacral chakra, we want it to be flowing. We want our energies to be flowing in the center, specifically our emotions. We don't want to stop them. We don't want to suppress them. We don't want to contain them, which we could talk about what it means to have an underactive sacral, which is that containment, that holding, that contraction that can also be coming and be imprinted in the body through trauma, sexual trauma, and other trauma.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you said that. And when it comes to the water or the fluid nature, I want us to also think about the cerebral spinal fluid. We haven't gotten deep into this. This is part of the deeper levels of sexual alchemy in terms of actually going into the sacred practice of sexual alchemy and how you align with the moon cycle, how you allow your body's natural secretions to actually circulate through the body, and what that process actually is to reach like peak illumination and awareness and connection and universal consciousness, and just that expansion of vision charged throughout the entire body, right? That is an actual alchemical process, right? Through the chemistry of the body. Part of that process is the cerebral spinal fluid, which is so significant because when we're talking about the sacral energy and our sexual organs, the brain, our central nervous system, is a part of that process. And there's a fluid dynamic that is a part of that process, right? And I even would love for you to speak on this, sis, like from the lens of a doula, about the amniotic fluid, right? Like even when we're developing in the womb of our mother, right? There's a fluid nature, right? We come from the primordial waters of Nu, right? The waters of the mother, the waters of the great mystery, right? So the water element in this energy is very, very significant. Even when we think about the semen, right? And we think about the ejaculation, right? There is the fluid nature that's very significant as that seed enters into those waters, right? The acidity and the alkalinity that have to be balanced in order for the egg to be fertilized, right? All of that is a beautiful expression of fluid chemistry.
Yeah, that's so important. Science is catching up now to what our ancestors knew, and specifically around what Nef is saying around these secretions. So our chakras are actually connected to our endocrine glands, which is our glands that secrete different hormones and different chemical compounds for our mood, for the for connecting to the circadian rhythm when we sleep, like cycles of life. So yeah, really important.
And I would love to make sure that we also, everyone feels clear about these two different expressions of what sexual energy, how it can express itself, right? Sexual energy can express itself in a masculine context, which is most of what we're seeing now, almost, and it's hyper masculine, right? Because when we think about even systems like capitalism or things that there's an aspect of healthy masculinity, and then when there's an overemphasis, right, and it's not balanced, it can over express itself or over exert itself. And right now, through a lot of the hypersexuality, we're seeing that expression. But masculine sexuality isn't necessarily something that's innately overemphasized. It's just active, right? It's active and it's overt, it's direct, right? That's the expression of masculine energy, sexual energy, and masculine energy in general. And then on the other side, the complement of that is the feminine energy that's receptive, right? So you see that directly when you think about the male and the female body and the act of intercourse, right? One is actively entering into the other is receptively receiving the other. It's surrendered to it. So that process is necessary, right? And that symbolism is important because the feminine sexual energy is actually designed to be what? Receptive. receptive and mysterious, right? And we don't see a lot of that anymore because we are even seeing women and the feminine energy is suppressed and it's like masculinized, right? Where you have, you know, popping pussy everywhere and just like, it's like the sexual energy is like on steroids, very masculinized. Whereas a sacred feminine sexual expression is seductive. It's going to pull you in. It's sexy, but it's not overt, right? Yeah, so I wanted to speak to that. And then also we, in terms of imbalance, right? Remember, we always talk about ma'at, right? So there's a spectrum, right? When something's balanced or unbalanced, it could be this way or that way. So we talked a lot about hypersexuality. We talked a lot about how that can express itself. A lot of that is expressing itself through disease, right? Sexually transmitted disease, things of that nature. On the other side, it can also be repressed. So sexual trauma, like there's no innate response to what it would be. It can also repress itself. It can hold back. It can become stagnant and blocked. So I don't know if you want to speak a bit more about that before we go into the principle, the ancient Kemetic principle that highlights and governs this energy.
Yeah. So like Nef is saying, obviously the way, just like, you know, you can be in a household with a mother and father and have 4 kids, right? And they all experience essentially the same trauma of their father and mother dynamic or relationship, but each child internalizes the trauma, or the trauma affects or imprints on the child differently, child by child. So the way that we internalize or the sexual trauma is imprinted on us differs, right? Differs because of our environment, who we are innately as our soul, what, you know, the past lives that we come from, we internalize it different, and that's important to know. And one of the ways that, and we talked about this on our first live stream, and we were talking about the sexual imbalances that are existing in the world collectively right now, but we're kind of mentioning them again in this one because it's so directly connected to the sacral chakra. One of the ways that it can show up when causing the sacral chakra to be underactive, right? And when underactive, all you have to think about is constriction, right? So if our muscles are tight on the physical level, it's restricting that subtle realm, that energy to be flowing in the subtle realm, because the muscle is contracted. Or, you know, the relationship is both ways, right? So the energy can first be impacted, contracted, causing the muscle to be contracted, and if the muscles are contracted, it affects the energy. They have a symbiotic relationship. Now, when our sexual energy is contracted from the sexual abuse or the trauma we've experienced, it will show up as shame. And shame is a dense emotion. It's one of the ways that we disconnect ourselves to our bodies the most often, right? It's like we can't even touch ourselves, right? We can't even literally touch our breasts, right, in a non-sexual way because we have shame. It's like, no, but I can't touch my body. You can't even massage, you know, your own vulva, right? Your lips or your penis. You can't even touch it in a non-sexual way to just nurture it and bring circulation there and bring oxygen there, because there is a shame. It's like I can't even touch my own body. And the sexual alchemy work that Nef and I are talking about, that's why we've named it Embody Your Power, because this is an embodiment thing. So our connection to our bodies is vital. This information is not meant to just be in the brain. We're not giving you this information for you to internalize it as just knowledge for you to share with others. We want you to move it through the body, and for you to move it through the body and actually go to the places in the body to be able to release it and alchemize it. And one of the emotions that we inevitably know we will be working with is shame. And that's a contraction of that sexual energy. It's like tying it, holding it, you know, and to share my personal story with that, that's kind of how I internalized my abuse as a child, I did a lot of suppressing, so much so that I remembered in my late, like past my puberty age, probably like around my early 20s, I would actually feel pain from getting aroused. That's how constricted I was, constricting this creativity, this power to create life, to create businesses, to create relationships, healthy attachments to others. You know, my intimacy with folks, literally I was so contracted that when my energy, my aliveness, right, we're talking about this, our primal life force, when it was being activated, when it was being aroused, I would experience pain. And I know that's not just me, because there's a lot of women that don't only experience pain through arousal, but also through penetration. So it's a constriction of that. So shame, we can experience shame. We can also experience depression, right? Like, it's like, oh, you know, depression. I remember in like 2016, around the time I was, you know, stepping into this work and doing this alchemy work on myself, and with some clients, this is the beginning of my journey as a medicine woman. I remember depression becoming such a high, like a high thing. Like everyone was, oh, I'm depressed. It became like a hot topic. Now it's anxiety. At the time it was depression. And I always innately felt it was an imbalance. And the more I worked with women, the more I understood that if their aliveness, right, their turn on, right, we usually see our turn on as like horniness, but really it's a turn on. Our life force is turning on. So the women that I worked with that had the similar internalization of their trauma as me, of shame, they often not only didn't have access to their creativity, but it was also their joy, their pleasure, their connection to their bodies, like just at a level of love and respect for their body, to be able to touch their vulvas and massage it out of just love, and out of like removing not only the shame, the suppression, but what has turned into numbness. So a lot of women will experience an inability, right? So that contraction, not only does it, or that underactive sacral chakra doesn't only, in this, I know for sure it's also with men. So, right, I'm saying women because that's my experience, but this energy of suppression and shame is also connected to religion. Right? So there could be people that have this purity mindset of like, I can only be holy. I can only be connected to God, right? This, your creator. You can only be connected there if you're suppressing in disconnecting to your body, right? Heaven is above, everything is external. And we talked about, you know, our power being internalizing our power versus externalizing it. And one of the ways we also do this in the sacral chakra is externalizing our power as well, instead of like really hoarding and keeping it. So depression is also a symptom of an underactive sacral chakra, which is our pleasure, right? Oftentimes when we're depressed, when you see the frequency, like when you see the level of frequency in somebody's body that's depressed, oftentimes it's the frequency is slower, which it's more cold. Right. So the body has lack of energy. You will often see it on like if you look up emotions, how emotions show up in the body, you'll see depression is more of a low vibration. It's cold because there is that lack of energy. There is that lack of that turn on, that life force that is connected to our sacral chakra. So depression is one. Unbalance, it can also show up as a hormonal imbalance. And when we're talking about the state of the world right now, in this like very alive debate and argument and fight around gender, like, am I a man, am I a woman? There is no such thing. All this fluctuation that is happening in our mood, in our decision making, in our beliefs, are directly tied to our hormones. And right now on the planet, there is a huge hormonal imbalance, and specifically with men, because I have a little boy, and it's something that I'm becoming more conscious of and more intrigued with. I know that testosterone, which is an important masculine hormone, is under attack. It's very low in men currently, based on many things that are happening. So a hormone, and for women, estrogen, we're low on. A lot of women we're experiencing low progesterone, low estrogen.
There's a lot of synthetic chemicals that are impacting the hormones specifically, right? There are xenoestrogens. It could be something as simple as you got that nonstick pot, nonstick pan, and then you scrape it and you're cooking some eggs or whatever you're doing. Like it lets out xenoestrogens that mimic estrogen, and they're endocrine disruptors, right? So a lot of the reasons why we have a lot of reproductive issues, right? A lot of ovarian cancer, a lot of fibroids, a lot of cysts, a lot of prostate cancer, right? Yeah. So and then I was also, when you were speaking, I thought it was really important what you were saying about the underactive energy, because this is the seat of our power. It's also like, it's our sensual energy. So when you talk about that repression, it's like a desensitization, that numbing, all of that is very significant. It's also significant when it's underactive, like the imbalance of like perceiving sexual energy as being something that is judged as bad, right? So it creates judgment, regret, all those other energies you were talking about, guilt, right?
Yeah.
Shame. And I think it's very significant, because I noticed with sexual imbalances that, especially those who experience trauma, who then repress and constrict, there is a sexualizing of simple natural things that revolve around nudity and just creative expression, like art that is through nudity, or culture, right? When you see the African woman with their breasts out, like it's sexualized, right? Or simple things, like natural things, like you using the bathroom, whatever it may be, like those things can be sexualized. And that is an expression of sexual imbalance. It could also be expressed on the other side through the hyperactive sexual energy, right? Overactive. So there's a lot of ways that can be expressed and imbalanced. Like we mentioned, the sexually transmitted diseases, right? That runs rampant when you're talking about a lot of exchange of sexual energy. There's also the reality of the exchange, the actual nature and energetic exchange of those that we actually have sex with.
Yes.
Right? So that's a very important piece to talk about when we're talking about balancing the sacral energy. And I'm working with people personally on this. One of the most important practices that needs to be done is you need to know and you need to face every single sexual partner that you've had, and being clear about that and connecting with that. And that's a really important practice that I think is very important, because energetically speaking, if it's not dealt with, that energy is still present. So it can stagnate, it can present itself. Sometimes people's sexual partners can manifest as fibroids, as cysts, right, in their body, right? Everything starts in spirit and then takes form in flesh. So if you're experiencing any imbalance or disease in this area, I want to implore you to look at the metaphysical, look at the relationships that you've had sexually, and look at what your relationship to your sexual energy and to sexuality has been, and see where and how you can balance that, because that's an important part of the healing process. Yes, it's the chemistry, the foods you're eating, balancing your hormones, of course, right? You want to create, if you're dealing with disease, you want to alkalize the body. Disease cannot persist in an alkaline environment. So you want to make sure that if you need to apply discipline, right? Coming back to what sister was saying, look at the screen, the Smaitawi, when they're tying that knot, there's a deeper layer of expression. There's so many layers of expression here, but I will share one additional layer with us here. That knot is an expression of discipline.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at two masculine figures. I'm going to share a feminine energy, multiple feminine energies. There's always feminine energies as well that are complementary, but this is speaking to discipline. And discipline is considered to be a masculine expression. So you see male figures. Sexual discipline through sexual alchemy and the union of the two regions is not an expression of suppressed sexuality. So if that's something, if you're celibate because of your trauma and repression, that's very different than what we're talking about with sexual alchemy. Sexual alchemy requires sexual discipline, but it's through liberating the sexual energy. And as that energy is liberated and you activate the power of that energy, it must immediately be disciplined, because it's a process of you actually learning how to work with the energy. It's not about releasing the energy right away, right? So through sexual alchemy, it's not an expression of like sexual magic, right? That's a whole nother thing, right? It's not an expression of just releasing and using the power for something. It's about circulating and imbibing, right? Letting that energy actually move through the entire body. So that requires discipline, right? It's just like if you're trying to heal your body and heal your hormones, it's going to require discipline around what you eat and what you don't eat, right? So that discipline piece is very important. And I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything else.
Yeah, that was, thank you for bringing it up. That part is so important because it reprograms us to begin, if we haven't yet, right? Because the way that our sexual energy is perverted, it's perverted in this world. You might have never been able to really see the sacredness of sex, but that discipline is when you are able to really connect to how sacred this act is, right? When we talk about our sacral chakra, right, this activating the center, right, this life force, this turn on, this is your spirit. So when we think about the sacredness of yourself, when you have self-respect, when you have self-love, when you understand the importance of your energy, right? You must have discipline because you will be more like careful to think through who you share it with. Not everyone should have access to that most intimate part of who you are. Like it's your soul, your spirit. And because again, we're not seeing the sacredness of this exchange. We are sharing our souls with everyone. Okay, not everyone. Okay, I went a little deep. Not everyone, but we are sharing it more often than we should be, because a lot of times, even for, again, bringing it specifically to women, and I'm sure it could be the same for men as well. So I'm talking to the feminine, but how many times does our bodies tell us no, but we still do it? Right? Even if we're in romantic, intimate relationships, but that day our body's like, it's a no. Because that man is going to suck you dry. He ain't going to give you the love and respect that you need. He ain't going to give you the reverence that your soul needs. Your body, because we're sensory beings in our womb, again, is so intuitive. Our pussies are so intuitive. It's like, that's a no today. But we still ignore that and give our spirit off to that person in that state, which, this is a whole other can of worms that, we can open, but then we create soul ties, right? Sex is an exchange. So you're allowing a spirit to come into your spirit for this interplay, for this dance, this union, right? And it doesn't just end there. Right. So the person you're sharing this, the part of your spirit
fluids with each other.
Yes, which is, fluids, they say it's nectar of the soul, right? Our fluids is nectar of the spirit. So, the fluid, even your sweat. Yes. And that's why when you're engaging in sexual activity, you might smell the person and be like, that's the intelligence of our bodies again. Or you smell or taste someone, you're like, oh my God, I could taste them forever. That is our body giving us vital information. So the discipline piece is important because, and then speaking specifically to men, this is the place where, in my humble opinion, I think men need the most work, because we're in a culture where men are hypersexualized. It's like, oh, just give yourself to everybody. You're a man when you keep doing it. You're a man. The more women you get, the more of a man you are. And at my humble age of 32 years old, I know that for sure. You having more bodies doesn't make you more of a man, because I can have as many bodies as a man too, because it can be easy to get into that intimate spot with someone. To me, what makes an honorable man is a man. And even as a feminine, when I walk in a room and a man has a disciplined sexual energy, I feel it. And I feel it at a body level. I feel it because I feel the potency. I feel the potency of his energy because he's been cultivating it. In men that have a weak discipline around their sexual energy, as a woman, I also feel that. And women that are operating in their dark feminine, that's when you're easy to manipulate. That's when I got you buying me all the things that I want, and I'm making you do all these things, and I'm friend zoning you, and I'm using this intuitive, wide pelvic bowl, this intuitive spirit that I have to abuse your undisciplined sexual energy, your undisciplined spirit, your undisciplined sexual energy. So the discipline piece is vital. So the sacral chakra is not only, you know, to me, it's a feminine chakra, but it's connected to the feminine part of a man, of like your emotions. How connected to your emotions are you? Are you able to say no to a woman's sexual pull when your body is telling you no as a man? Are you connected enough to your emotions to even know and sense it? Or are you numbing your emotions so much that you could beat it up and you could beat, you know, whoever and whatever, even though your body is also saying no, for dishonoring your spirit?
Yeah. And overact. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to add, because I'm on the relationship piece, just to kind of wrap it up. So another imbalance that shows up with the sacral chakra, because we're talking about this men-woman dynamic, you know, whoever you're choosing to engage with, dynamic, relationship dynamic. Another way that that an underactive sacral chakra would show up, and this is again very loud in the collective, is codependency. There's this need for this, or there's a dependency on this, on having this other energy nearby constantly, not allowing you to fully engage in your energy, love on your energy, understand your energy, be in your energy. There's the constant need to be attached to another, which is why oftentimes we can go from relationship to relationship to relationship without a break to really analyze our own energy, analyze our own spirit, to be like, am I ready for another relationship? And what do I need to integrate from the last relationship that I was in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very, very important. I think other expressions of hyperactive sexual energy also can be expressed outside of the relational dynamic, when it comes to people who are like, you know, there's the term that they use these days is incels, right? Involuntarily celibate, right? You don't have the option to have sex with someone else. So you having sex with yourself, essentially, right? So hypersexuality can be expressed through porn addiction. It could be expressed through this overexertion of masturbation, right? And desensitize, right? Even when you think about certain things like people using toys or other tools, not necessarily, there's nothing wrong necessarily with using these things for pleasure. It's a matter of knowing what impact and what are the limitations and where are the boundaries that you want to set with these things. A lot of women are literally physically desensitized because these vibrators, right? And because the way that we're now hyper masculine in the way that we feel that we need to sense and express our sexual energy, where women don't even know exactly what is the nature of her balanced and natural state of pleasure, right? Because there's this desire to just reach this certain point in this outcome, or this conditioned program based on the culture that's like, oh, this is what you should do, this is what you have to do. Even music and different sexual trends, like when people start talking about tossing the salad, like that's something that literally the influence of what is on the waves, the mainstream radio waves, influences how people actually behave sexually. So that's something to be very aware of, especially if you have children. Children are being exposed to sex and pornography way before their minds can develop and process these things. So I think it's very important to make sure to have these conversations with the children and to be clear about what is going on. So even some of the things that we will be offering specifically around that, because I think that that's very important. And a lot of parents don't have the resources, or they may not feel like they can handle having that conversation. It's a very sensitive matter, and it requires deep trust, because you don't want just anyone teaching your children about sex, but you also don't want your children learning on their own through these distorted outlets of what sexual energy is, right? Same thing with masturbation. Yes, you want to know your body. You need to connect with your body. You need to know how to engage your sexual energy, how to find your pleasure and connect with your body. There is an imbalance when it's overstimulation. There's a lot of young boys that are being introduced to pornography and becoming addicted, and it's throwing off their entire chemistry of their body. Because remember, when you ejaculate, that is a chemical process that is now unfolding, right? The dopamine that's being released, and then becoming desensitized, and then not being able to engage in the real world with actual people, you know, to actually engage in a sexual encounter that is between you and another person, because of how hypersexual it's getting on an inverted level, right? Where the masturbation is now an addiction, right? And that's because sometimes the chemistry of that process is now creating a soothing for wounds, for trauma, for pain, for emotions that aren't able to be processed. So that balance is very important, because as our sister said, this is also the seat of the feminine, even for males, right? So being able to process your emotions and not have emotional reactions, or feel like you just need to get the energy off. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting up early in the rising, like we said, balancing your circadian rhythm. The testosterone levels are highest for during the peak of the day. So it's different from the chemistry of a woman who's flowing with her infradian rhythm as well. Men do best going to the gym first thing in the rising because of that, right? So there's ways that you can engage and pattern and design your life in a way that actually nurtures your natural chemistry instead of going into imbalances. And it's definitely a process. So I do recommend those who are going through that to actually seek support. There are support groups, right? And then there's a lot of books, there's a lot of content out there around this, but it's just very important to have a bit of discernment with that. So I'm gonna talk about that specifically. So I want to just like move through really briefly the Kemetic science that is governing and expressing this particular energy center. And it's specifically associated with something that our sister was saying about the dark feminine, right? Now, the dark feminine and the light feminine are one energy, right? We're talking about a polarity, so they need each other, right? This was depicted through the symbolism of, or the mythology of, Aust and Neferka. So these are the two sisters. These are the twins, right? So Neferka is considered the dark twin of Aust, or Aset, or Isis, right? These are the different interpretations of the energy, right? Isis comes from the Greek interpretation. So when you look at these two energies, they're always shown together, and you'll always see this cobra as well, which is very interesting. You see the falcon wings. Remember all of the things that we've already taught about these energies. The distinction between knowing Aust and Neferka is what they wear on their crown. Aust is always shown on the right. Aust is the one with the throne on her crown. And on the left, Neferka is shown with the house, or it almost looks like a basket, right? Or the palace on her throne, on her crown, excuse me. These two sisters are always depicted when you see the resurrection of a SAR. So remember what we talked about when we talked about sexual alchemy, we connected it with the astronomy, right? And we were speaking specifically that this was representing a process, right? Just like, for example, certain holidays through Christianity, like, for example, Easter, right? A lot of people may not know when they say pagan origins of Easter, pagan means non-Christian origins. So these are actually the non-Christian origins of the resurrection principle, right? So we had talked about before, when we talked about the judgment scene, and we talked about the scene of Ma'at, when the heart is weighed and the person, the querent, right, the deceased, is led to the judgment hall of Asar, right? In the underworld, Asar is the lord of the underworld. Remember, we talked about the death for rebirth, right? And then when that resurrection occurred and Aust was impregnated with Heru, the principle of levity, Asar remains in the underworld and governs the underworld, or the unconscious or the subconscious terrain, while Heru, our higher self, governs the conscious world, right? So these are all principles and symbolism. So I want you to think about this symbolically. You have these two feminine principles, these two sisters that are depicting two aspects of feminine energy. One is life and regeneration, Aust, Aset, and the other is death and decay. That is Nephthys or Nebetet, right? So you see another depiction of them here as well on the right, where you see Aust with the throne on the left, and you see Nebetet with the house and the basket on her crown as well. They're always seen working together because what does this represent? It represents the divine sistership, right? The sisterhood that is necessary to remember the pieces of Asar's body. Remember, Nebetet, our sister, comes to help her mourn when her husband is killed and helps her find the pieces of his body and put them back together. So that sistership is important for union. So we're talking about two elements of our own feminine energy, whether we're a male or a female, two aspects of our feminine energy, a dark and a light aspect that we need to remember and put ourselves together to make ourselves whole, right? That's what this is symbolizing. So it's interesting because when you think about Nebetet coming to help Aust mourn, right? We had talked about the principle of Set in the last cycle. We talked about how Set protects Asar. It's our ego, right? Set being the masculine principle of death and decay. So Set represents the actual killing, right? Because that's an active thing to kill. But Nebetet represents mourning, because that's what happens when you receive death. You mourn. Right? So that's the way that these energies express themselves. Now, we always see these two sisters together. Like when I went to Kemet and I went, every single temple that I went to, you would see Nebetet and Aust, even if they were depicted in bird form, right? As sparrows, they would still have the crown of Nebetet and the crown of Aust, right? The throne and the house on their crown. This is very significant because even if you notice, this almost looks similar to the Smai-Tawi symbol. You see the balance of the two energies. They're still expressing. You may not be familiar with all the symbols, but you have the expression of the lotus and the papyrus. That's representing the upper and the lower land, the desert and the fertile land. It's literally speaking again to those opposites, life and death, right? And you need both, right? So we need the light and the dark feminine. So when we talk about Aust, we always talk about Aust in the sense of purification, right? Because Aust is the light. She's the frequency of the light, and Nebetet is the frequency of the dark. So I want to speak about Nebetet because Nebetet is actually the energy that governs the sacral region. Now, Nebetet is considered to be the lady of the house, right? So what that means, when you see this crown on her head, it's speaking to this aspect of the feminine that is actually sistership, right? It's the supportive nature of what we think of when we think of sister, right? Nebetet is the sister. Nebetet is not like the dark aspects of the feminine energy are purposeful, and when they're in Ma'at, they can be expressed righteously. All of the principles and energies and forces of nature are still governed by the cosmic principles. So Nebetet, Set, Aust, Asar, Het-Heru, these are principles that are more terrestrial. So these are energies like we embody the energies, yes, but they're also expressed in a more physical, like humanesque nature. Whereas principles like Tehuti and Ma'at that we've talked about, those are cosmic principles. When you talk about universal law and cosmic order, I'm saying that these principles of death and decay are still governed underneath universal law and cosmic order, right? So Nebetet energy, this force, this principle of our nature, this dark feminine energy, it's a sacred feminine principle, but it can also be imbalanced. And that's what we were just talking about. We were talking about the imbalances being death, decay, disease, right? When you think about the sexually transmitted diseases that literally bring death, we're talking about sexually transmitted diseases that bring decay, right? The deterioration of the body. That is all the energy of Nebetet. And that's Nebetet expressed in a extreme sense, right? Because we are in a degenerate cycle. But I also want to speak, as we're talking about balancing energies, we want to talk about Nebetet in her purity, or her balanced expression. Right? Her balanced expression is giving the darkness purpose. She is the seductress, right? She is the one that calls in the energy, pulls the energy in. It's the sensual aspect of the mystery of the feminine, or the feminine, right? This is a beautiful energy that we all have to come to terms with our embodiment of it, because when it's villainized and it's ostracized, it also blocks our ability to receive and to pull energy. It also blocks our ability to have healthy relationships with sisters, with women, right? With your mother, right? This is an energy that's very significant that I think is important for people to recognize. In the mythology of Aust, Het-Heru, and the whole story that unfolds, right, with the Holy Family, Nefertiti is seen to be a barren woman, right? While Aust is representing the fertility and representing the mother, Nefertiti was originally shown as a barren woman who's infertile, right? So again, remember that all energies must be balanced. So you can only have day because you have night. Remember, we need both and. Otherwise, there is no purpose. What if there's no toxicity? What is purification? What are you purifying, right? It gives the other purpose. So it's important to recognize that there are ways that we can engage our dark feminine traits in healthy, balanced ways, right? That are not manipulative, that are not destructive, right? So the way Nefertiti can be used, because remember, she's still part of that solar power family. So she's still part of, she is our sister. She does help to put Asar's pieces back together. Why is that? Sometimes you need to activate that dark feminine. You need to know when you need to make sure people ain't fucking with you, right? Like that's Nefertiti coming in. Nefertiti is the one to be like, I said no, right? So Nefertiti can express that barren aspect, but in the mythology, one of the things that's usually left out of the story at times is the fact that Nefertiti and Asar, her sister's husband, she was the mistress. Sometimes she's called the mistress of the house. So that whole energy, that prostitute energy, that is this archetype. The imagery of Mary Magdalene as being the prostitute in Christianity is an expression of Nefertiti. When they say Mary and Mary Magdalene went to Jesus's tomb and wept, it's speaking to the mourning principle that Nefertiti represents as a principle of death and mourning and grief, right? So she is the aspect of us that we have to engage for sexual healing, because there is a grieving process, there's a release process, there's a death process that has to happen for us to release sexual trauma and sexual pain and aspects of that density that we have taken on through sexual trauma. So those are healthy ways that we can engage with Nefertiti. Now, when Nefertiti and Asar have their affair, she does get pregnant. So what is this symbolizing? It symbolizes when the principle of life and regeneration copulates with the principle of death and decay, there is a principle that is born from that. And that principle is Anpu. Anpu is the force of discernment. Anpu is good judgment. That is the child of Nefertiti and Asar. Interestingly enough, Aust is the one who raised. So Nefertiti is also the deadbeat mom because Aust is the one who ends up actually raising Anpu. So she raises Anpu, and Anpu ends up being her loyal supporter, right? So it's interesting how that story unfolds, because Anpu, being the principle of discernment, he is symbolized by the jackal, right? So that dog energy, because you see him with the jackal mask. One of the things that I'll say briefly about the jackal's nature, as my spiritual father, Baba Het-Heru, loves to teach about this story, he talks about how it's important to recognize that the reason why this aspect of discernment is depicted through Anpu in this way is because the jackal, it cannot just digest its prey once it kills it. In order for its stomach to be able to digest the food, it has to decay, right? So recognize that, because decay is the principle of the mother of Anpu, right? So it's speaking to that, right? The food has to decay, so it will bury its food, its hunt, and then come back and sniff Sniff it out, right? You know, dogs are known for having a good sense of smell. That's that good judgment, right? So when the jackal recognizes that it has decayed enough, it will dig it back up and it will then eat it. So that's speaking to what is it required for us to have good judgment and discernment? Patience, right? There's an aspect of being able to like, let me come back, let me see. Okay, I'm not sure yet. Let me chill, right? There's no eagerness, right? When it comes to discernment. So you take your time. What's the rush? You don't have to just run and have sex with this person in this moment, right? So come back to the discernment because we're talking about the sacral energy, right? Discern who your partners are, who is worthy of entering your womb. I'm telling you, like, I think about when we came out of our ceremony in November, we had the conversation. It was like, you have to calm down. Okay. So there's a sense of worthiness and healing and sanctity and power that we have to then restore to this energy, to this beautiful, powerful life force that creates all things, creates actual human life. How can we restore the sanctity to it? Because it's become so profane where for some people having sex is like tying a shoe. I saw the chick on the internet that had sex with 100 men in one day. You feel what I'm saying? Like that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying like that's complete profanity, right? Of something so sacred. And again, that sacredness doesn't mean you're a prude and you don't have sex, okay? It means that you are valuing your power.
Yes.
Because is it power if you don't value it? If you don't value it, it's not valuable. So that means you don't even have your power to begin with.
Yes.
So that's what Anpu represents. Anpu is also the one who is the embalmer, right? Anpu is the guide of the deceased in the underworld. Every time you see the deceased moving through the duat, or if you remember in the judgment scene, let me bring my aunt back, Anpu is there twice. Because Anpu leads the deceased into the judgment hall. And Anpu is the one who's weighing on the scale. You see him holding the thing over there to make sure that the weight is perfectly measured. He's got the discernment. And then Tehuti is there writing it down, the judgment and what was the result, right? But you see Anpu there twice, right? Anpu is leading the way in, and Anpu is the one actually doing the weighing of the heart, right? So remember that these principles are indwelling within us. We can embody them. And our goal is to embody these principles in Ma'at in a balanced way, right? We don't want to excessively embody anything, but we want to synthesize. Ma'at is about the synthesis. Once you have the full spectrum, like, okay, I know this is the dark aspect of Nebetet. I know that this is where Nebetet is imbalanced or hyper active. Let me balance it over here. But sometimes you might need to activate those aspects of Nebetet that are darker, right? You might need to really express that energy to preserve yourself. So it's about synthesizing, knowing what's appropriate, knowing what's right, and you do that through what? Discernment. So that is the medicine coming from our ancient ancestors. And our sister is going to make sure that we have another way to fully embody everything that we just received into our minds and making sure that we're bringing it into our emotional body, our ka, our spirit, and into our bodies.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing, that beautiful, powerful information that is often, we often don't have access to know the story of our ancestors, our people that, had so much knowledge and information about the world. They were seekers and so intelligent and wise. So thank you to the ancestors in you for bringing that through. So as we've given you a lot of information by now, and Nef and I, again, we take pride in embodiment. So we give you this information, but we want you to know and feel for yourself, right? You can have all the information in the world, but as we are in the Aquarian age, we're moving to the I know. Right. So for you to know, that means in the age of all this information, for you to have a feeling of I know, it has to come from the body, from the felt experience. So we want to do a practice to close us off. So if you're watching and you're like driving, you might not be able to do this, but if you're somewhere at home, I would like for you to come into easy pose, which is just crossies. Come into a seating position. If you're on a chair, that's fine too. As long as you plant your feet on the ground. And we'll begin by just taking a couple of inhales. We're bringing in oxygen into our bodies, because when we bring in life force, and you could do it at your own pace, just take a couple breaths. When we bring life force into the body, we start acknowledging the subtle realms, and we want to start going into the subtle realms. And as you are taking breaths, I want you to start moving your awareness down. So just inhale and exhale, and visualize and see yourself bringing your awareness down from the head, down the neck, down the heart, down the diaphragm, into that pelvic region, that pelvic bowl that we've been talking about. Bring your awareness down. And as you bring your awareness down, I invite you to close your eyes and bring your attention in and through to the third eye point. So to the point in between your eyebrows. And keeping your awareness there, I want you to start to the left, making circles. So making circles with your hips. And you could watch me for the first one. So again, making sure that you're bringing your awareness down to the pelvic bowl. And then as you close your eyes, you're bringing your awareness to that middle point. And you want to start as you inhale, bringing your chest forward. And then on the exhale, coming back. So we're doing hip rolls. And you want to make sure that you're really bringing your attention down to the pelvic bowl. So it's the pelvic bowl that's moving. You want to keep the spine straight and the head right over your body, as if you are balancing a lotus on top of your head. As you come up, inhale. And then as you lean back, exhale. And what we're doing here is we're bringing up all the things that are in the unconscious into the conscious mind. So inhale when you come forward, exhale back. As you bring your attention to the pelvic bowl, you're bringing energy, blood flow. And as you're circling, begin to notice what sensations might be coming up in this region of the body. Are there any emotions? Tapping into the subtle realms. When you close your eyes, you're bringing the attention inward. Inward, so you are focusing on the subtleties. Noticing the emotions, not getting attached to anything that you're feeling, just focusing on the movement. The sacral is about movement. Noticing what the movement is bringing up for you. And finding a middle and a stop, and then doing the other direction. So if you were going left, start circling right. And just noticing if there's any heat being built up as you are bringing your attention down to this pelvic bowl, to this private part, the sensitive part of our bodies. Noticing the emotions. And now with this round, beginning to pull in your muscles. So when you, as you're coming up forward, release the muscles. And as you are pulling back, pull in that perineum, pull in the pelvic bowl muscles in. So back, in, and as you come forward, release. Bringing in the pelvic muscles up and release as you come up, pelvic bowl up. And now begin to see as you are exhaling and inhaling, exhaling and inhaling, begin to see a vortex, a spiral of energy in that space, moving as you are moving and spiraling. See yourself mixing up the energy in the space and bringing light into that spiral. So bringing any light to that, any contraction, any energy that might be tight, seeing an energy of light coming in and releasing. And allowing this beautiful golden light in this pelvic bowl region, lighting up and getting brighter. This light penetrating any contraction, any numbness, any shame, any guilt. See a beautiful light that you are generating through this motion, spiraling in this beautiful bowl that we have, that we hold so much energy. See the light get brighter. And as the light is getting brighter, it's relaxing all the muscles and it's penetrating any dense, dark, foggy cloud energy that might be in this region. And then slowly coming to center. And then from here, taking a deep inhale through your nose and bringing that breath all the way to the pelvic bowl. And as you breathe in, I want you to contract and hold that muscle up again, pulling in all the muscles from the pelvic bowl up, the perineum. You could see as the anus, tightening up the anus muscles. Hold that energy. Let the energy move up the spine. That beautiful golden light. Hold. And then releasing all the tension. So relaxing and exhaling. Letting a sound come out if that's available. Sound is transmutation. It creates alchemy. The sound waves coming out. And we'll do that one more time. Inhale through the nose. Filling up the belly, filling up the pelvic bowl. And then as you fill up, I want you to now bring in and pull in that muscle, squeezing up the perineum, the anus muscles, squeezing, holding tight, activating that part, holding, and then with the exhale, relaxing that muscle and releasing out through the mouth, through the vocal cords. And we'll do that one last time as you're getting the flow of this hold. But this time we'll hold when we exhale. So exhale, inhaling in 3, 2, 1, in through the nose. Bringing that energy all the way down to the pelvic muscle. And then without holding, first just exhaling. And then when you're done exhaling, now pull in that pelvic muscle in and up. You can squeeze in the navel, bring in the navel back as well. Hold, contract, bring, restrict that area. So energy can move up the spine. Hold. hold. You could squeeze different levels. Bring up, 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 tighter, 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 and then relax and let it all down. And then from here, relax your hands down to your knees, bringing in the index finger to touch the thumb. In Gyan Mudra, this is the wisdom mudra. Keeping the eyes closed, internal gaze, and just noticing, meditate here for a moment and noticing the work that you've done in this part of the body. Noticing if there's activation, if you're feeling this area more, if you feel lighter. Just noticing the pelvic bowl once you've brought movement to it, oxygen, a release. And listen, deep listening. And internally sending energy there. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe to relax. You're safe to trust. I love you. 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 Just filling up the pelvic bowl with love. With love. I love you. I love you. Safety and security. You are safe. You are safe. You are safe. And then slowly, at your own pace, coming in. Coming back to the screen while staying connected to that place. Stay there. Stay in the pelvic bowl. Stay in this region of the body. Stay connected to this gravitational pull. Thank you for practicing with us. We would love to hear how it was for you. Yeah.
I do want to ask everyone who's with us live, please go ahead and let us know how that practice was for you. Incorporate the practices into your day-to-day. This is a great way to tune into this energy. This is not a one-shot, one-time done ting. So it's important to recognize our energy maintenance is a consistent process. This is why doing the Sexual Alchemy Retreat is such a powerful experience, because we get to physically be present with you. So we're gonna share, as you got anyone who wants to share how they're moving through this energy, how that practice was. We want to talk about the Sexual Alchemy Retreat in Cabo Verde, because if you are able to make this move, if you are able to come to Cabo Verde, to come with us to Africa, we're gonna bring you on our land, okay? Our land, not just me and Leyanne's land, our land. And Cabo Verde is so significant to the diaspora of Africa, especially those of us whose ancestors went through the transatlantic trafficking, because Cabo Verde was a key port, a key point where the Portuguese actually traded our ancestors. So returning back to that place is such a prophetic and powerful aspect of our remembrance of that unity. When we talk about Aust fashioning that phallus, right? We didn't talk about this, but I do want to mention two ancient words for, because we've been talking about the sexual organs, and the shetet is the feminine sexual organ in Medu Neter, and Henenum is the masculine sexual organ. So even just the resonance is different. So I like to always point that out, right? Henenum instead of penis, right? Penis just sounds kind of weak, right? I don't like that. So Henenum, you feel the resonance in the word. Even the word vagina, right? Like it has like a heaviness to it, or it's like very round. Shetet has a very feminine, like, right? Shetet. So I just wanted to share that because part of that prophecy, right, in that story is that the erection is brought forward and fashioned out of gold or out of clay, out of stone, in order for Asar to be resurrected, right, and to impregnate her for that immaculate conception, to birth the higher self. But it's symbolizing this union of Africa, of the continent, but also that fashioning of the henenum, of the phallus, of the erection, is speaking to the children of Africa whose seed has been spread all over the planet, and our ability to come back and return and come back together. So us as sisters being literal embodiments of Aust and Nebet's Het, right? Of that sistership that we're talking about, in the way that beautiful union is happening through this guidance that we want to bring those who are called into sexual alchemy for this retreat in Cabo Verde for Carnival. Right, the Carnival ritual in Sao Vicente in Cabo Verde is a very, very beautiful, powerful celebration of creative energy, right? It's celebrating literally fertility, sexual energy, beauty, right? This radiance, right? So the Carnival festival is like the climax, right? But we're going to work you up, right? We're going to have so many different practices. So all of that processing and releasing that needs to be done through the sacral energy that we talked about today, like we're going to move through that, whatever attachments are there, whatever density is there, whatever trauma you've experienced, so we can move into that healing process through an alchemical transmutation of that energy. We're going to do a beautiful sacred fire ceremony. All of the different movement practices are going to help you to actually move the energy from your body. Sometimes we process things mentally or even emotionally, but they stay stuck in the body. So the movement practices will do. And we're going to be supporting you every step of the way. As I always say, when Leyanne's leading in a practice, I'm going to be around making sure that you're doing it properly, making sure you feel fully supported, making sure if you need a moment, if you need an embrace, that I'm there. Likewise, same if I'm leading a practice, our sis is going to be there for you to do the same thing. We're going to make sure you're well fed, right? We have our chefs that are going to be preparing beautiful, decadent, and delicious island vibe foods that is of the highest frequency. We talked about the alkalinity. So we're going to make sure that the food that we're getting is locally sourced. And whatever we get that's not locally sourced is going to be ethically sourced. It's going to be organic. And we want to just make sure that you are well nourished. So all the meals are included. Even we're going to have a day journey after Carnival. We're going to have a day journey. We're going to be swimming with turtles.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? I just want to make sure that I highlight for those that might be just coming onto this for the first time today. So what Nef is talking about is a retreat. So this webinar that we're doing is a sexual alchemy like dose of the medicine. So the hip rolls, the Sufi grinds that we just did, that small meditative practice connecting to our sacral chakra, our pelvic bowl, is just a small dose of the actual transform life-changing experience that we are bringing folks into. And we are bringing people of African descent. So sis is talking about this location of Cabo Verde being so important for us because we are calling in African people back home for the sexual alchemy retreat, a 7-day life-changing experience for those that want to embody their power. So we are calling specifically women and men that want to experience literally that chemical process in their body. They want to embody their power. They're clear that they are here to change the world. They are here to do something. They are here to be part of the resurrection of African people on this planet at this time of revolution. They're clear about that, and they're looking for a space, a place of deep, potent technology, of ancestral technology, for them to step into and alchemize the trauma that they've experienced. And the reason why we're doing specifically sexual alchemical work is because our sexual energy is our life force. So we're literally going to the root. Nef and I take pride in going into the root, which is why we're doing sexual alchemy. Because when we're talking about sexuality, it's very triggering. Sexuality is is a taboo for a reason. We don't talk about it. We're not able to be educated on our sexual energy because it is our creative force. So all these activities that we're going to be doing, from sound healing to meditation to sexual alchemy classes to womb healing workshops to carnival festivities that Nef was talking about, it's specifically part of this alchemical process that you will be going through. And we're starting with the trauma. So we're going to start with the density, the bottom of the chakra, the root, which we'll talk about on Friday, the root, the sacral, the solar. We're going to be moving you through so you can be like cycling this energy and it's not stuck and suppressed in the body. Because again, when the muscles are contracted and stuck, the energy is not moving well. There's a lot of dis-ease on the planet because our energy is not moving well because of the miseducation in the way that all this information that our ancestors knew very well, right? The whole civilization that we are existing in now is mirroring from what our ancestors knew in their way of life and all the intelligence and wisdom that they were able to cultivate during this specific era. And it was because they knew this information. So we are resurrecting this information. We're bringing this information back to African people so we can embody and become who we are destined to become, which are powerful beings on this planet. So if you're someone that is like, I'm ready, like I want to embody my power, I want to create the life that I want. Again, this is about creativity, your power. When you're like, if you are ready to harness your power, to create the life that you want, to unshackle your life force, to be able to have your creative power moving in your body for you to create the life that you desire, that your heart and your spirit knows you are here to create, we are calling you forth. We've been creating this. It's a portal. Like it's a portal, and there's many different aspects of it, as Nef was saying, that we have been curating with intent, with spirit, right? With the creator, with source, with the divine feminine, the divine masculine, so we can support you in unlocking this interplay that is your birthright to experience in your body in this lifetime.
Ashe. Yeah. And there's so much to this experience. It's going to be so juicy. So if you feel excited about coming, I mean, you're going to experience the most beautiful location. We're going to be our sexual alchemy classes are going to be right on the water. In that beautiful pyramid structure you see on the screen, we're going to be having beautiful sessions, really going deeper, right? We just scratched the surface here. We're going to go on the other side. We're going to be dealing with the other energies that we haven't shared during this webinar. And even the experience of going to swim with the turtles, it's a very intentional practice that we're building ourselves up to, because there's an aspect of our release and our surrender to the ocean and to the wisdom of what turtles embody through their shells, through their ability to contract into themselves, right? And be empowered in themselves, because sexual alchemy is about you circulating and being fully in your power and in your intercourse with your divine and sacred energies within you, your divine masculine and your divine feminine energy within you. So it's a very beautifully curated experience. If you want more information about the experience, we want you to go to sexualalchemy.com. If you want to reach out to us, the email is sexualalchemy@gmail.com. The link is in the description. When you go to sexualalchemy.com, you can apply for the retreat. Remember, it is February 28th, so we want to make sure to get you onboarded as soon as possible. And if you see on the screen, there's also the opportunity to book a chemistry call so that we can make sure that this is a good fit for you, right? Making sure, like, that's a very important for us, because we are guaranteeing this transformation and the fact that your life is never going to be the same after this experience, right? Because not only just
your life and everyone that is connected to you. So let's be clear about that. We are here for change, we are here for the revolution. We are being active portals, active participants, active alchemists in this revolution. And we want to make sure that when you come and you change and transform your life, when you embody your power, we want to make it clear that you're coming not only with you, but all of your relations. So all of your relationships will be transformed, because by the time you get back to wherever you flew from, you're going to be completely different. And it's something that's going to be a felt experience. They're going to feel your power, right? Because you're going to be emanating. A lot of the work we're doing is in the subtle realms, right? In the energetic realms. So it's going to affect your aura. It's going to affect the way people feel you and experience you, including those that you love deeply. That might also be needing the healing, but don't have the access in the way that you do in this moment. So if you're saying yes, please follow it. Sis, can you put the website up so they can see it?
Yeah.
So there's a form on the website that you could just fill in, and that will be your application. And then the chemistry call, like Sis said, is really important. If you just have a question, if you're just like, I just got on this live, I'm feeling it, my heart is like, yes, I'm ready, but you might have questions, or you want to process it some more. Like, we would love to be in that process with you to support you, because it's, again, it could be intimidating to be like, to jump for the life-changing experience, even if our heart is affirming that that's what we need to be doing. We want to guide you and support
passport. Just make sure you got your passport.
You go out there.
It's a requirement, okay? And I want to thank everybody who's been here with us live, showing us all this love. We did have Sister Lori who participated and said that the hip circles are so healing. And I want to shout out everyone else who's been here with us. Our brother Rob, shout out to the Tehuti Ma'at militia in the house. And our sister Evelyn sending us love. And then, of course, our brother Patrick, who said, thank you so much for sharing such valuable and important insights. Your strength and openness brings so much healing and understanding to others. Truly inspiring. Ashe. All praises to the Most High, the divine spirit that's really just embodied and indwelling. And it's really a pleasure. It's a privilege. It's an honor to be the transformation guides for this medicine. All right. We have our final webinar for this series on Friday at 2 p.m. So we hope to see you there. It's your last opportunity to catch us live, right? Root chakra. Okay. So if you are ready to roll and get this party started,
do it. Let's do it.
Alchemy.com. All right. Thank you so much, sis.
Yes, thank you. Let's rise, y'all. Sign up, apply. It is time to embody our power. Peace.